Is he joining? Rahul, are we online already?
No, ma'am, we are just going live. So by 9 we'll be online.
Okay, because I just
Live.
had placed it. Okay. Give us a warning before you start. Give us a...
Sure, ma'am.
So Archana, are we going to have Indian audience or global audience? What is it?
I think today it would be Indian audience. We did mail to everyone we have on our mailing list. But mostly it will be Indian audience. But through our website, the video gets watched by lots of people.
Okay.
So if you wish, we can also give a link and ask people if they have questions, they can ask you. I mean, we can.
Yeah, that's what I wanted, because a lot of work is being done globally. So I thought I would get some inputs and questions from them also. So.
Okay. So we can actually share the link once it's on the website, and then we can all keep sharing and people can sort of.
Gautam, you want to try sharing your PPT if you want to try with its opening?
Yeah, sure, I will. Just a second. Okay, so can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. We can.
Cool. Seems to be working. Yes.
Yeah.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, ma'am. So we can start now. Whenever you're ready.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to IDEC Wednesday Cafe. We today again we meet every fourth Wednesday evening at 9 o'clock, and we bring you very exciting topics from across the globe. Our panelists include doctors across the globe and in India, and we try to bring you good and latest research. Today, we have yet another very exciting panel. We have Dr. Vaishali Deshmukh from Pune, and we have Gautam Phadke from Los Angeles. So we have a very interesting topic today, something that is new, that is being learned. And today we know that technology is marrying medical science together to give us solutions. And one such topic today that is the unmet need, and that is teleheart rate variability for diagnosing cardiac autonomic neuropathy. So this was something that has been very elusive for us. How do we measure cardiac autonomic neuropathy? And using AI, so we have the person who works in the AI and we have the doctor who is doing it, and we will be hearing it right from them. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Vaishali Deshmukh. She is a MD, a gold medalist, a DM, and a fellow of American Association of Clinical Endocrinology. She's also SCOPE certified in obesity. She's an associate professor in endocrinology at Sassoon General Hospital in Pune, consultant and head of endocrinology department at Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital, as well as Deshmukh Clinic in Pune. She's an invited faculty. We have heard her over across the country in various conferences and CMEs. Founder and secretary of an NGO called Sphere, which is working very intensely she has various passionate fields, and that I'm sure she'll be sharing. Her awards include her being a gold medalist, also a Proficient Woman Award, and many, many more awards. So Jeevan Gaurav Puraskar, wow. She has more than 34 publications. She has mentor and teaching experience of 25 years as icon in Sanofi and fellowship in MBM in diabetes. She's the author of chapters of 8 books and numerous press articles. Her research is in 63 global phase 3 trials, 2, 3, 4 clinical trials in diabetes, obesity, osteoporosis, CVD, autonomic, and NBM research. So this is something that she has been passionate about, and she often shares offline when we meet, and her special interests are mind-body medicine, neurobehavioral
endocrinology.
Endocrinology, oh yes, and endocrinology in women. So as an organizer of Synapse 2020, 22-23 and Geriatric Endocon 2020, Endo Gossip Series, Women and Diabetes 2020, MBM workshop, again from 22-23. So with all these in her kitty, in her valuable CV, and we see her being very passionate about new things. What we are hearing today is something very new, using tele and AI for cardiac autonomic neuropathy. So over to you, Dr. Vaishali. We will enjoy hearing you.
Thank you, Dr. Archana, for that kind introduction. And let me at the outset thank the whole IDEC team, because I was just sharing with you that 1 month ago, I just was so interested in sharing all that we are working with the world. And Neeta was so kind enough to give me an opportunity today to be in this cafeteria. So thank you, Neeta, and thank you, Team IDEC, for having me here. So I'm also glad that Gautam is also here, because he is the one who is the first-hand experience sharer for our AI project. So nice to be with Gautam too. So I'll just start my presentation straight away. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, can make it full screen. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, and so I will be giving a clinician's perspective on tele-HRV for diagnosis of cardiac autonomic dysfunction, and how this digital solution has found some answer to an unmet need. We have not been able to assess cardiac autonomic neuropathy in the early phases, and this probably provides a solution to this. So I'm sure that all the clinicians can correlate with these clinical scenarios. So how many of us see a young lady with diabetes, with palpitation, with breathlessness on walking with normal cardiac evaluation? She has nothing on the ECG at all. Secondly, we see patients with repeated rise and fall in blood pressure and dizziness, pre-syncope and syncope very commonly. We don't find an answer to it. Secondly, we see patients in the theater where you have a lot of cardiovascular instability, and we can't answer the question why it's happening to a patient who has been fit prior to surgery. A patient of diabetes who has abnormal heat and cold intolerance. A patient with diabetes with bloating, dyspepsia, acidity, skin dryness. Diabetic young male with erectile dysfunction and urinary frequency in spite of good diabetic control. Asymptomatic myocardial ischemia and infarction in a young diabetic male, and diabetic patient with orthostatic hypotension, or a male who has a fall in the bathroom just with a micturition syncope, and then sudden cardiac deaths. I'm sure all of us relate to all these cases, and we could not find the answers all these years because everything seems to be normal in their ECG, 2D echo, and in their labs, and we are really wondering why this is happening. And all these are manifestations of cardiac autonomic dysfunction. So what is cardiac autonomic neuropathy? It is defined as an impairment of cardiac autonomic control in patients with diabetes following exclusion of other causes. So there are multiple causes, but diabetes patients, when you've ruled out other causes, this is what you get. So why is it so important for a doctor to know about it? Because long ago in 2011, the Toronto Consensus Panel has already given this data that the prevalence is nearly around 20%. So 1 in 5 diabetic patients would have cardiac autonomic neuropathy. And this increases up to 65% as the age advances and as the diabetes duration advances above 15 years. So you can see that it is a risk marker. It's a proven risk marker for mortality and cardiovascular morbidity, irrespective of controlling the other factors. And it is commonly associated with the increased risk of silent myocardial ischemia and silent death, sudden cardiac death. So it's a progression and it's a promoter of diabetic nephropathy too. So, and now there is some evidence which is emerging between the CAN and the glucose variability, especially at the hypoglycemic spectrum. So we have seen that hypoglycemia is an important cause for cardiac autonomic neuropathy in diabetic subjects. And I think all the newer drugs are now focusing on reducing hypoglycemia. So cardiac autonomic neuropathy is also likely to reduce with use of newer agents. What about the ADA position statement? This statement long ago mentioned that CAN can affect youth, especially the young diabetic women with elevated HbA1c level. It can present with impaired glucose tolerance, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. And it may be completely asymptomatic. It may be detected only on some minute specific tests such as HRV with deep breathing. So HRV is a very sensitive and very early marker of cardiac autonomic dysfunction, even when the patient doesn't have any symptoms occurring. The good news is that it can be actually reversible if it is diagnosed rightly, and this has been proven in the STENO2 study in type 2 diabetes, which has shown that as soon as the factors like hyperglycemia, dyslipidemia, hypertension, and microalbuminuria in patients with diabetes is reduced, the risk of CAN progression is reduced by nearly 68%. And even the DCCT has shown in the type 1 diabetes that as soon as the glycemia is intensely controlled, the prevalence of cardiac autonomic neuropathy reduces nearly by 53%. So what it tells us is that it's a reversible complication of diabetes if it is picked up rightly and early. So early intervention is definitely known to reverse it, reduce the risk, and improve the quality of life of the patient. So definitely it makes sense in identifying the cardiac autonomic dysfunction at the earliest stage and also reversing it when it is possible. So prevention is better than cure in this situation, and anticipating this dysfunction early is the first thing that we as diabetologists need to do. We need to identify the risk factors, we need to give prophylaxis, have early diagnosis, and if possible, treat it. So what does ADS say on this? This position statement in 2005, it's been now nearly 10 to 15 years after that, and we still fail to do a CAN screening for our diabetic patients every year. And at least they recommend that at the time of diagnosis in type 2 diabetes, they should be getting assessed for CAN screening with an HRV. And within 5 years after diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, at least a type 1 diabetic patient should have one HRV assessment done. If there are symptoms, you need to do it earlier. Similarly, the Toronto Consensus Panel on Autonomic Neuropathy in 2011 has suggested that beyond these factors, as soon as you see diabetic patients with poor glycemic control or one major cardiovascular risk factor like hypertension, dyslipidemia, or smoking, or presence of macro or microangiopathic complications, or when you are preoperatively assessing the risk for a major surgical procedure in diabetic patient, it is a need to assess for cardiac autonomic neuropathy with the proper testing methodologies. So are you able to treat CAN is the second question. So fortunately, this is the only complication of diabetes which has a major role of lifestyle modification. So you can see that lifestyle modification comes first in the treatment of CAN, followed by reduction of insulin resistance, tight glycemic control, management of dyslipidemia, antioxidant therapy, vitamin usage, treatment of myocardial and metabolic abnormalities, thrombosis, management of orthostatic hypotension, symptomatic treatment of concomitant diseases, and others. So you can see that it's a battery of symptoms and battery of drugs, which is helping in treatment of autonomic dysfunction, whether it is sympathetic overactivity, whether it is orthostatic hypotension, whether it is glucotoxicity, lipotoxicity, oxidative stress, or inflammation. All these have respective therapies, but one common underlining therapy is lifestyle changes, and lifestyle changes form an important mode. Why I am into autonomic research is because I am into mind-body medicine. Why I am into mind-body medicine? Because lifestyle interventions is a part of mind-body medicine. So lifestyle changes and autonomic health is directly linked, and this is what it has been proven with various studies. So then coming to the question of how to diagnose, why aren't we doing this? If it is so essential and so important in a diabetic patient, why aren't we doing it on a regular basis? The reason being that the signs and symptoms are very subtle. Then the cardiac reflex test, I'm sure a lot of physicians have had a thesis topic on autonomic assessment, and you know how tedious it is to get these done in the bedside. Also, ECG, a short-term electrocardiography, or a 24 hours Holter ECG has been shown to be beneficial in assessing, but may not be a complete answer. Ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, heart rate turbulence, baroreflex sensitivity, muscle sympathetic nerve activity, catecholamine assessment, cardiovascular sympathetic test, and heart sympathetic imaging have been studied, but all these have been tedious and costly in terms of their evaluation. And finally, when we are talking of CAN assessment, there are only two tests. One is the cardiovascular autonomic reflex test, which are used in the diagnosing and staging, and then reduce heart rate variability. Now, heart rate variability has an advantage that it can diagnose the disease at the earliest stage. Before the CART tests are positive, you can actually assess the neuropathy in the heart by using a heart rate variability assessment. So this is the importance of HRV in diagnosis of CAN, and it is one of the most happening research in diabetes currently. So how has the research evolved? You can see that the phase 1 was early mid 70s, when having described the cardiac reflex test for diagnosing the autonomic neuropathy. So it was helpful in diagnosing an established complication. It was not helpful in diagnosing the earlier part of the cardiac autonomic neuropathy. So then came the phase of in late 90s, when HRV came into picture as a quantitative test of cardiac autonomic modulation. So early detection of autonomic dysfunction could be possible even before the occurrence of a full-fledged neuropathy. And this was feasible because of HRV. And then came the current phase, which we are working and which Gautam is also here for, is starting late 2010 and peaking in 2020 is the decade of artificial intelligence, which is predictive testing. So predicting the risk, catching the complications before they are striking. That is the beauty of AI in assessment of cardiac autonomic neuropathy. So it is even before the HRV gets positive, you have an AI model to predict whether this person is likely to have a cardiac risk. So that's the, you can say, the evolution of cardiac autonomic neuropathy. And it has been a fantastic journey for past 10 years working in this area. And it's been a teamwork which has actually got me to present this today over here. So what we important parameter that one needs to remember is that in HRV analysis, what is important is that it is a smart tool, but validation of the technique is very important, especially in terms of the time and frequency domain indices. So I'm sure that all of you must have worn an Apple Watch, which gives a heart rate variability, or it can be a Fitbit or any other device. But when we're talking about minute assessment of CAN, there is an important role of validation and quality control of the indices which have been mentioned in HRV, and they make that the most reliable as a tool for prediction of autonomic dysfunction. So finally, after a long, you can say, a thought process, a discussion with cardiologists, neurologists, technology people, after a big brainstorming, our team with Phadke et al. Began this work in 2017. And we tried and demonstrated the utility of HRV in screening patients with diabetes for the risk of CAD or heart attack assessment, so that we get a opportunity to intervene much before a cardiac event occurs. So, and in fact, we have reached a stage where AI can predict the cardiovascular risk with HRV to the tune of nearly 91%. So it's a very highly predictive tool, and it definitely would help in a long way to reduce the cardiac risk. Now, here, I would just like to highlight one point is that we all know that it's a predictor of mortality, the cardiac autonomic dysfunction. But what is the link between the heart and the brain? So the autonomic system, the vagus, forms the link, and earliest affection, even before the vasculature is affected, the vagus and the autonomic nerves are supposed to be affected. So one is likely to get ECG abnormalities and arrhythmias very late in the course of the disease. But autonomic dysfunction is the first thing. So first the wire is affected, and then the vasculature is affected. And that is the course of situation. So we have seen that even patients with normal ECGs can have an abnormal HRV. So abnormality in HRV can be the initial most predictor of dysfunction in the heart, which is much, much, much before the occurrence of vasculature or micro and macrovascular complications. So what happens is a disturbed sympathetic and parasympathetic balance and a sympathetic overdrive, which is the common underlying mechanism of the spectrum of diseases which contribute to the CV risk. So you can see that autonomic dysfunction forms the base of metabolic syndrome, obesity, hypertension, anxiety, depression, heart disease, diabetes. Why is it so? Because there is a imbalance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. And this balance, this whole hypothesis is labeled as the neuroadrenergic hypothesis described by Grassi et al. So basically, this forms a major, you can say, chunk of causation of all the NCDs, including psychiatric, including cardiac, and can form a common link in occurrence of these diseases. Now, this autonomic dysfunction is also a hallmark of the HPA axis dysregulation. And we know that all the endocrine axis regulation begins here, and that is why there is hypertension, metabolic syndrome, loss of vasoprotective effects, the cardiac dysfunction due to the various inflammatory marker and BDNF affection. And this whole chain of event with depression precipitates the coronary artery disease. So this is one of the hypotheses which has been portrayed, that autonomic dysfunction forms the earliest link why this cardiac dysfunction is also linked to the psychiatry, the heart, and the nerves all put together. So coming to the technology per se, so this is the Chronovisor Tele HRV. It's a digital solution for CV risk detection in diabetes. It's a innovation by a startup, Promorphosis, which is Pune-based startup company. And basically this Chronovisor Tele HRV is compared to the gold standard technology, and validation has been done in this accord. So you can see this device. It's like a small laptop device. It's a handy device. You can carry it to the periphery. It has the leads, ECG-like leads. It has a recorder. It has a tab which has the application, and this is linked with the Bluetooth with the recorder. And this it has battery operated recorder. So these are the battery charges. So it's a simple device, and it has multiple softwares installed in it to record the ECG as well as to transmit it and then get the detailed analysis of the HRV indices. And advantage of this is not only does it give the HRV, it also gives the cardiac autonomic reflex test report also. So it gives both in one device. So it is not CART separately and HRV separately. It's two-in-one device, you can say. So you get both the assessments in one device. Now this, you can see this is done on a clinic. It can be done in a clinic setup. These are the ECG leads, 4 leads. This is linked with the recorder, and this recorder records on the tab and the application, and this is then uploaded on the cloud. And this cloud at the back end is known to process the data and get the report. The report is available in this format. So you can get a HRV report, you get a plotting, you get a histogram, you get a graph, and you get a line, and then you get an interpretation. So I'll come to those reports in the further slides. So what is the advantage here is that you can see that these are all CAD assessment options. So when you're talking about comparison to stress test, CT angio, or a myocardial perfusion scan, you can see that the Chronovisor Tele HRV is the non-invasive device. It is low in skill. Even a 10th pass person or an uneducated person can be taught by training, and high sensitivity of detection with very low per capita expenditure and very low maintenance cost and low reporting cost. So you can see that compared to the other devices and other options available, this becomes a easier, portable and handy option at a lower cost for our patients. So this is our data which was just presented last month at the Philadelphia conference in June 2023 for validation of this Tele HRV, which is a novel digital health technology. And I don't understand the technicalities in that detail, but this whole technology is equal to, or you can say matching in terms of the HRV task force standards. So you can see that whatever the global standards are for having an ideal HRV, this ratio, this so-called ICCC, is equal to 1 nearly, which is suggestive that it matches the gold standard worldwide. So the technology, and fortunately this meeting was the American Heart Association meeting, having a lot of cardiologists and electrophysiologists also. So it was accepted for presentation and poster presentation, and the data has now been published in the Journal of the American Heart Association. So that also validates the technology, and we are excited about that. So it has received a lot of industry innovation awards in India, and I'm sure all the technology people have done an excellent job. And now it's the duty of the medical team to take it ahead to our patients and help them through community. So they have received numerous awards at different, you can say, conferences, and now currently it is under Indian patent application, and that is in processing. So where do you really, now we are fond of positioning of molecules. So where do you really use this HRV in a patient, and where do you think of it? So ideally, any clinic who sees health checkup should be assessing this, because they are likely to pick it up the earliest. Because as I said, if nothing is abnormal, this is likely to be abnormal. This can be the earliest tool. And even for preoperative checkup or pre-anesthetic fitness of the heart, you can really think of doing a HRV prior to giving a cardiac fitness for a diabetic patient, especially when you're suspecting that there are subtle symptoms. And then when you want to really do a cardiac assessment of autonomic dysfunction, when you do screen for CAD, or where you want to look at a triage tool in chest pain or risk stratification where the patient lies, and when you want to really predict survival, because we know that a lot of the domains which are mentioned in the HRV also determine the survival and the lifelong longevity of the patient. So again, there is, as I'm a researcher also, I am interested in research, and a lot of companies are now using this, and a lot of research labs are using it all over India for pathophysiology of autonomic dysfunction, to assess the natural history of CAN, to get comprehensive endpoints in clinical trials. So in clinical trials, we usually use the ERT machines, the ECG machines, but this can be a sensitive point of care device instead of the ECG machine when cardiac risk assessment is to be done. Then clinical practice, of course, it has been most useful in my own clinical practice, and all of us who are a part of the team have been using this in the community also for camps, and we have also had early prognostication and prognostic information of a patient based on these parameters. So worldwide acceptance of this technology has now been placed, and as I mentioned, a lot of institutes in India like NIMANS, SGPGI, IIT Mumbai, SKN Medical College, Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital in Germany, Institute of Pain Medicine in Coburg, then Munich Open University, that is Yoga Forum Munich, and in US with Gautam's team at Los Angeles, especially in the AI and machine learning projects. Then COEP, College of Engineering Pune, Pimpri Chinchwad College of Engineering Pune, and CDAC Pune, which is Premier Advanced Computing Institute of Government of India for data analytics in this. So these have been partnering with us on various projects, and they themselves have had numerous publications using these devices. Now, as far as a clinician is considered, the community screenings projects have been actively taken place in Pavna Hospital at Somatne, which is an area near Pune. In our own clinic, we do it for our patients in camps as well as in endocrine patients, and cardiac centers and neurology centers with Dr. Kulkarni and Dr. Phadke, and Dr. Phadke Neuropsychiatric Clinic. Dr. Ambekar's Ayurvedic Center in Mumbai also does a lot of Ayurvedic research using this device. Our public health campaign by CBM and Spear, Win Diabetes by Hearts, focuses on doing camps for cardiac risk assessment, and this has been an important device which has helped us to assess the right pictures to be referred, right patients to be referred to the cardiologist at the right time. So coming to our published research, I'll just take you briefly through our presentations. This is the first time when we have presented at RSSDI Ahmedabad, where the study has shown that the autonomic dysfunction depends on the duration of diabetes. So we found that those with more than 5 years of diabetes, with more than 7% HbA1c, the chances of having this autonomic dysfunction through this device is significant, and may have therapeutic implications. So picked up at the right time. Suppose you have a patient with more than HbA1c of 7%, say 9 or 10, and you have duration more than 5 years, this person is likely to benefit with all those drugs which improve the cardiac autonomic dysfunction. Similarly, this study had won an award at the IDEC summit in Pune. The cardiac autonomic neuropathy and silent myocardial ischemia in type 2 diabetes. This was a pilot study. They found that in patients who did not have chest pain had significant cardiac autonomic neuropathy, and it correlated with their angiographic findings. And this was one important study which showed that. Then this study showed that association of prolonged QTC interval with cardiac autonomic dysfunction in type 2 diabetes. So ECG was correlated with the parameters of the HRV, and it was found that prolonged QTC interval correlated significantly with the cardiac autonomic dysfunction. This data was presented in Berlin in 2018 in the EASG. And here the heart rate variability indices in patients with micro and macrovascular complications was evaluated, and they found that cross-sectionally, those people with microvascular complications also had a significant cardiac autonomic neuropathy. So not only did they did not have a macrovascular complication, so it means that the heart was normal in them. In spite of that, with the microvascular complications, they presented with the neuropathy related to the cardiac autonomic dysfunction. And then coming to AI, I think Gautam will tell you more, but the studies which are done by Gautam, Phadke et al. And they have proven that it is an opportunity to diagnose even before an event happens. And if using this HRV data and using the machine learning technique, using this data, they found that nearly 91% of patients can be picked up. The cardiac risk assessment was correct to the tune of 91% in patients where AI model, which Gautam had designed, was used. So this was his paper, which was presented in the conference in 2020 International Conference on Machine Learning and Cybernetics. And this was published eventually in their journal. And you can see that it was also accepted in 2019 Congress on CVD prevention at San Antonio. So this again showed that the machine learning approach helped in picking up early coronary artery disease with the help of HRV. And this might be the future of cardiac risk assessment. That is what we think. So as I said that in future, what we plan to do is that we need to bring this into practice, that CART and HRV should be done in all patients with diabetes at least once at the time of diagnosis, and at least when they are having complications or signs and symptoms. It's a non-invasive test. So these are some of the reports which we have done for our patients. This is a patient with diabetes and hypertension. You can see age 59 years. You can see these parameters. These are interpreted by the backend team, and this has HRV as well as CART assessment. So it gives a supine heart rate. It gives the orthostatic challenge related changes. What is important is this SGNN. This parameter is the most sensitive marker of cardiac autonomic neuropathy, and this is what we are more worried about. You can see this plot shows a concentration here. Ideally, the plot should be, I'll just come back to that. So you can see that here there is an impression also that this tells us that it has been advised for coronary artery disease, and this shows indicate autonomic dysfunction, overall variability, and cardiac autonomic neuropathy is definite. So it gives an overall impression of the whole report. And you can see these, it's a very classic change that you can see. This is a normal report. You see the SDNN over here is 51. Normal range 32 to 93. Here it is 22, and here it is 8. So all these three are diabetic patients, and you can see that even their ages are not very different, 46, 49, 59. Even then, this kind of a picture indicates that this person is likely to have coronary artery disease. So he is a candidate for cardiologist reference. He is a candidate for protection and prevention. And he is a candidate for carrying on with whatever he's been doing all these years. So it is easier for me to identify which are the high-risk patients, stratify them, and refer accordingly. So similarly in the plotting, you can see that this is the normal graph. It is well spaced, and as soon as it gets condensed into this, and you can see over here in the third case, it has come to this stage. So you can see the difference in the histogram also. And for me, as a person who interprets the report, I am interested in seeing the graphs. I'm interested in seeing the figures and how my treatment is changing those figures. And this actually Dr. Ambekar, who is a Ayurvedic specialist at his Ayurvedic center, he has presented this data in the World Congress of Ayurveda in 2018. And you can see that in patients with hypertension, he has done these studies. This is before the Ayurvedic treatment that he offered to the patient. You can see this level of 25 and the same level after 6 months of therapy coming to 57. So this included therapy along with lifestyle modification for the patient, and the same patient showing a improvement in, so you can see the dates also, 24 July 2021, 5th March 2022. Within a year span, there is a reversibility of that data. Similarly, this chart has shown this condensed cigar-like pattern, and now it has dispersed. So you can see the date-wise change in the reporting. So there is a need finally to have a consortium and collaboration between basic medical researchers, clinicians, technology, AI people, and we need to harness the power of prediction. So large data bank is essential when we need to have a HRV aware, HRV related AI or risk detection model. And creating awareness, training our colleagues in HRV is one of our prime motives. Of course, clinical trials and drugs related to benefit of HRV is one second important area which needs to be looked into by the pharma also, because lot of, in fact, SGLT2 and GLP-1 analogs are known to have lot of data to show that HRV improves significantly with early use of these molecules. So you don't know that you may get a first-line drug which is likely to benefit the HRV earlier. So you don't know what is going to be the first-line drug based on this eventually in future. So to summarize, CAN is the most underdiagnosed and neglected complication of diabetes with a 5-fold increased risk. And unfortunately, there is no unified treatment algorithm for management as of date. It is a scalable, measurable, and affordable solution for CV risk assessment. Annual screen for CAN has been recommended by all associations, but it is far from real. And this is mainly attributed to non-availability of user-friendly point-of-care devices. And HRV remains limited, that is why, to the handful of research labs and expensive equipment. So our aim has been to give an innovative chronovisor tele-HRV solution which eliminates most of these barriers such as cost, technical constraint, and becomes easily available for mass application. So this is all that I have to share. And I would like to acknowledge all my partners. So these are our medical team. Dr. Nitin Phadke, Dr. Rahul Kulkarni, Dr. Sanjay Phadke, Mr. Vikram Lele, Leena Phadke, Madam, myself, our technology experts, Mr. Gautam Phadke, Mr. Vittal Kannade, Mr. Vikram Lele, and Professor Bhausar from the CDAC. And these have been our publications. I'll not go into the day, and these are the references. So that's all in my presentation. Thank you so much for the patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Vaishali. I think that was very, very innovative, something new, and hence we were all glued to the topic. Can we have the questions after we hear Mr. Gautam?
Yeah, sure.
So we'll do all the questions at the end. We have quite a few coming in.
Yes.
So it's a pleasure to introduce Gautam Phadke. Dr. Vaishali has already been telling us about him and his work, but in more details, he has his BE honors in computer science from BITS Pilani. He has done his master's in computer science from the University of Southern California. And presently he's affiliated to the software development engineer as a software development engineer in Amazon AI corporate headquarters in Seattle, USA. He's a researcher in multimodal generative AI. So, I mean, for us as doctors, this is all a very different language. So I hope I'm saying it right. But he's worked at the Weitz lab of USC in AI, in signaling processes after his MS, In past, he was involved in the collaborations with the medical professionals to research on applications of AI in the medical field, collaborated with medical professionals to create AI machine learning algorithms for prediction of coronary artery disease through HRV, which we are going to talk about today. And he's published a paper titled Prediction of Coronary Artery Disease Using Electrocardiography, a Machine Learning Approach at International Conference of Machine Learning and Cybernetics. Wow. So with all this wonderful introduction, all the things that you have been doing and Dr. Vaishali has shared about you, we are very eager to hear you. Over to you, Mr. Gautam.
Sure. So, thank you for such a warm introduction, and thank you very much, IDEC and Dr. Vaishali, for giving me this opportunity to present my research and, in general, interact with medical professionals. I mean, it's always great to do these kind of, cross-domain collaborations. There's a lot of learning and knowledge transfer that can take place with this. So I can quickly share my screen. Just a second.
Yes, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Can you all see the screen? Hello?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, cool. Sure. So, hey everyone, I am Gautam, and as Doctor explained, I am currently working as a software engineer at Amazon AI, where my team focuses on developing large language models for natural language processing, which is a fancy way of saying uh, we teach computers how to learn and understand human languages. Previously, in collaboration with medical professionals, I have worked as a researcher exploring applications of AI in healthcare. We worked on identifying patterns in ECG data and if it could be used to predict the coronary artery disease. I will dive deeper into it in today's presentation. Now, before jumping straight to the research, this is a summary of the topics that I would like to cover today. I would like to spend few minutes on introducing everyone to artificial intelligence, provide motivations on how it is relevant in today's world, and frankly, why all of you should be excited about it. Then I will talk about some of the existing real-world applications of AI in healthcare. I'll also walk through my research, which is the prediction of CAD using ECG, and discuss basics of machine learning workflows, taking this research as a case study. Uh, this will include data collection, feature extraction, model training, and finally inference. I'm putting out a lot of technical jargons out there, but we will get there in some time. Also, for the purpose of this presentation, I'll abuse some of the notations and use terms like AI, machine learning, deep learning interchangeably. There are like subtle nuances between them, but I think it shouldn't matter that much. Finally, I'll conclude with addressing some of the challenges of actually incorporating AI into healthcare and what role would AI might have in the future, at least from my perspective. Sounds good? Cool. So let's address the elephant in the room. What is AI? In a very sort of hand wavy way, the main essence is to main essence is to make a computer learn from experience. Now, one may wonder what the abstract terms like learning and experience even mean in computer science terminology. The way I like to think about this is um, traditional approaches of solving inference-based problems used to be, we explicitly used to hardcode rules. For example, I'm just like making up an example. Let's say for whatever reason, I want to build a system that um, detects which animal is there in a given photo if I were to provide a input photo to a computer. The traditional way of approaching this problem would have been, I would start writing rules one by one. Like if the animal has, yellow and black stripes on its back, it's probably a tiger. If it's fully white, it's probably a rabbit, and so on. Now, this approach is not really scalable. I mean, you can't keep on writing millions of such rules to cover every scenario. Um, so instead, scientists they came up with a different approach to solve this problem, which was to provide the computer with lots of input data and its corresponding output, and then letting the computer figure out on its own the rules for getting mappings from a given input to a given output. Um, in context of say the animal example that I talked about, what I would do now is I would provide the computer with lots of images and its corresponding categories. Meaning I'll provide it with an image. I'll tell the computer that hey, this is a cat. I'll provide a second image. I'll tell it that it's a dog, and I'll keep on doing it with thousands of images. Uh, and let the computer figure out itself which features in the image does it deem important for classifying the images into one of these animal categories. That's essentially broadly what machine learning aims to achieve. So just so that we are on the same page regarding some technical terminologies, I'll briefly go over this diagram. The input-output mapping that I was referring to, it's technically called as the training data. Uh, it's fed into a machine learning algorithm, machine learning model, whatever, where all the fancy learning of mapping input to a given output takes place. We will treat this as a black box for now, and address this later. Um, Once the learning phase is complete, the model is ready to be deployed, and for any new given data, it tries to come up with a prediction based on whatever it has learned in the past. So this sort of path from training data to ML algorithm to model, this is called as the training stage, whereas this path from the new data to model to prediction results, it's called as the inference stage. Cool. Now yes. AI is the new electricity. I love this quote. It's said by one of the foremost experts in this field, Professor Andrew Yang from Stanford University. What he means by this is just like how electricity transformed industry after industry 100 years ago, AI has the potential to do something similar in this century. Uh, the reason for this rapid explosion in this field in last 10 years is, I believe, twofold. First, with the rise of cloud service providers like AWS, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure, we have storage systems that can potentially store huge amount of data, petabyte scale data. And secondly, with the simultaneous rise of computing giants like Nvidia and AMD, we have graphical processing units that can perform massive parallel computations on this data. Uh, so just to go over some of the real world applications, I'm sure most of you would have heard of ChatGPT. Probably someone probably would have used it as well. It generates almost human intelligence level responses. Same with Alexa. Uh, it underneath it uses some language models to converse with humans. AI is also used in autonomous vehicles. I mean, Tesla uses it to train its fleet of self-driving cars. Netflix uses it to provide personalized movie recommendations. Google uses it to train its language translation systems, and in fact, it's used in thousands of other places. It's slowly getting adapted to domains such as transportation, law, or logistics, and so on. Uh, it also has found some traction in different areas of healthcare in recent years. I'll briefly go over a few of the applications in some of these domains. Now, if you look at outbreak prediction, few years ago, few years ago, we had the COVID pandemic, and we could see a lot of prediction models on our news channels estimating the number of infections per day, or estimating how the pandemic might spread across different regions and so on. So underneath, they were all driven by some or the other prediction models. um, it's also used in medical imaging. General Electric healthcare, it actually uses deep learning based computer vision algorithms for MRI reconstruction. Now, if you see the image on the left, it's an image that's actually generated by the AI, whereas the image on the right, it's something that's generated by the deep learning model when it takes the image generated from the MRI as the input. So you can see how much of a super resolution and sort of HD effect it has compared to the original image. And this is this potentially makes the analysis of MRI images easier. Now it's also used. It's starting to get used in drug discovery now. As we know, it takes a long time to develop any drug, and one of the reasons for that is there are like thousands of molecules out there, and when there are thousands of molecules, there are millions of permutations and combinations of these molecules. Um, in recent years, research has shifted to usage of something called as graphical neural networks, which try to reduce the number of permutations given drug might possibly need to make in order to sort of be successful. So it drastically tries to drop the time for the drug development, and it speeds up the discovery process. Uh, for electronic health records, Amazon actually has its own service called Amazon Comprehend Medical that again uses a language model underneath to extract medical information from unstructured medical tests accurately and quickly, uh, in order to provide a structured output of whatever medical records we want. Uh, so I think this is like sufficient motivation about why AI matters in today's world. I'll now come to the actual research work, which is prediction of coronary artery disease using electrocardiography. I'll set some context for motivations behind conducting this study to begin with. Mm, Now, according to the WHO, there are close to 10 million fatalities due to CAD every year, and almost two-thirds of the patients die even before reaching the hospital. Um, a gold standard technique for definitive diagnosis of CAD is coronary angiography. But again, angiography requires well-equipped labs. It's a relatively costly procedure, and it's also challenging to identify genuine patients for CAG referrals. So that's why we were looking into developing screening tools for prediction of CAD that will at least help and identify the patients that need to be sent for angiography referrals. Uh, Studies in the past have shown some indication of association between ECG and CAD. Also, ECG being non-invasive in nature and relatively low-cost procedure, we believe it did merit some exploration to see if it can be used as a promising screening tool. Uh, Now, the first challenge in data-driven research is what kind of data do you actually collect? Um, since we were trying to infer whether ECG can be used to predict CAD, it made sense to collect mappings between ECG and CAD for every patient. And of course, thanks to the efforts of Dr. Phadke at SKNMNC, all consenting patients referred for coronary angiography were included in the study. 235 patients between 30 to 75 years were enrolled, and patients with cardiac arrhythmia, ectopics on resting ECG, and the ones who were previously diagnosed with CAG were excluded from the studies as per recommendations by the doctor. After exclusion, 152 patients were used for the analysis. Now, for every patient, we recorded 30 minutes of high sampled ECG in supine position prior to angiography, and we selected multiple time windows of 100 seconds for every patient as our data point. Out of all the patients referred for angiography, 108 were detected to have CAD positive, and 44 were detected to have CAD negative, which shows that manual referring has an accuracy of somewhere close to 70%. The second stage looks like this. We have the raw data of ECG recordings and whether the patient was CAD positive or not. But how do we really feed this data into a neural network model in any meaningful way? Now, this leads us to feature extraction stage. Mm, Now, if you look at this diagram, one of the most prominent features in ECG waveforms are the R peaks that can easily be detected using standard peak detection algorithms like Pan-Tompkins. Once the R peaks are detected, we select 30 consecutive RR intervals from a 100-second block of ECG window for any given patient. Now, the original data set had contained close to 71% patients with CAD present and 29% patients with CAD absent, which indicates a class imbalance. This is generally a problem because the model tends to bias towards the class that has a greater presence in the training data. So we use some bootstrapping techniques by which we randomly sampled um, more CAD negative patients as compared to the CAD positive ones, so as to balance the overall distribution to somewhere close to 50-50. Now I understand that the last two slides might have been a bit too abstract to visualize how the data flow was going on. So you know we can visualize the data to look something like this. Of course, I'm making up some of the values, but the concept still remains the same, and it's the same feature set that we used in our research as well. Mm, the columns from age, gender, RR interval 1 to RR interval 30, they are something which you can call the feature sets, or the input data. And the output column is like the actual output, or you can call it labels. So they indicate, the labels indicate CAD positive for positive, and like CAD negative for negative. Um, a single row in this data indicates a single patient, meaning uh, if I were to interpret, the age of this patient is 67, gender is male, there are some bunch of RR interval values, and the diagnosis obtained from angiography was positive. Similarly, over here, the age is 45, gender is female, bunch of RR values, and the diagnosis obtained from angiography was negative. So yeah, long story short, this is what we will feed into the neural network model. The first column, the all the columns excluding the last column comprise of the input data or the feature sets, and the last column comprise of the actual outputs, or the what we call the label of a given input. Uh, Now I come to the perhaps most daunting slide in this presentation. Um, I would like to spend some time at least in trying to unravel some of the mysteries behind what happens in this black box. Like, what does learning means? What does it even mean to train a computer? For simplicity, I have skipped some of the aspects of all the techniques techniques used in our original research, and instead I'll only focus on what I would perhaps say the simplest algorithm in machine learning, which is like logistic regression. It's essentially a algorithm that lets you classify between two values, meaning in our case, we only need to classify whether a patient is CAD positive or CAD negative. So using logistic regression makes sense. Uh, let's say that we mark CAD negative as 0 and CAD positive as 1. I'll slowly go over, what these values are trying to imply. So the x1, x2, xn, these are nothing but the features that we saw in the previous slide. For example, x1 is the age, x2 is the gender, and so on. Xn is RR30. The one is just a bias term. I won't explain the full theoretical need of why it's there, but it's there. Um, the W1, W2, Wn, these are what we call weights of a model. Uh, what they essentially try to imply is, say, if W1 is 1, if W2 is 2, it implies that, the effect of x2 on the output is twice as more as the effect of x1 on the output. This Z, it's nothing but a weighted sum of all the features. It gives weightage to how much important a given feature is. So it's a simple summation of all the features and then just adding a bias term to it. Now this fancy looking logistic function, what it tries to do is it squishes any data that it sees into a number that's in between 0 and 1, so that we can interpret this predicted number as a probability value. It's just much more easier to interpret, or rather think of it this way. Um, Now I'll quickly walk through a single example to see how the internal dynamics are actually working, and hopefully help everyone build some intuition. For example, consider this example where the age is 45, gender is female, the output is negative, which means 0. So age is multiplied by W1, W2 is multiplied by gender, RR30 is multiplied by WN, and this Z is passed through the logistic function, and some output is generated, for example, 0.86, whereas the prediction value was supposed to be negative, which means 0. Now, this is clearly indicating that the model is predicting the wrong value, which means it's predicting that the set of features that we provided are CAD positive, and it's actually CAD negative. So this 0.86 and the actual value 0, we call it error. And this error is sort of transferred back into the model, and the model tries to adjust some of these weightage values. So it tries to tinker with the weight values a bit, so that in the next iteration, when I try to do this forward pass, maybe the prediction would actually be accurate compared to the last time. So this is like a very sort of hand wavy way of saying what learning is. Learning is essentially a two-pass process. It's a forward pass where I um, pass the input in this forward direction, then I compute the error, then I propagate this error back to the network. The network tries to adjust the weights so that in my next attempt, the prediction that I'm getting is probably correct. And if we keep on doing this for hundreds and hundreds of iterations, generally by the end of it, model performs much better compared to what it was in the early stages of the iterations. I guess that's a gist of what the black box is doing. Uh, for our purpose of actually training the models, we split the data into 75% training data and 25% test data. We only train on the training data, and once we are, say, satisfied with the results that we are seeing, we use it just once on the test data in the end of the inference stage to uh, get our accuracy metrics. Now, this is like the inference stage, or maybe you can call the test stage, where once we were satisfied with our training of all the models, and of course, like logistic regression is not the only model that we used. We used a bunch of different models. These models essentially try to perform the same binary classification task, but the underlying algorithm within each of them is a bit different. Like the XGB is called as gradient boosting, RF is random forest, then this is logistic regression, naive Bayes, nearest neighbors, support vector classifier, like fancy name trying to do the same thing, but in slightly different way. We observed that on the test set, the gradient boosting algorithm, it gave, or it topped all the specificity, sensitivity, F1 score metrics. For some of you who might not be fully aware with these metrics, I have like listed a formula here. You can refer to it later. So yes, we obtained a specificity and sensitivity of 88.79 and how much 87.17 using the gradient boosting classifier, and a F1 score of close to 90%. Long story short, higher the F1 score, probably the model is performing better. Now, these results are superior to the available screening tests, such as stress test, which has a specificity range between 70 to 80% and sensitivity range between 60 to 70%. It's probably also superior compared to the manual based referring that we saw some time back, which had an accuracy of close to 70%. Now, all the F1 score values, they look good, but what are still some of the challenges of actually using these models for say some of the real world applications in for example prediction of the disease. um, there are possibly more than two challenges, but these are the these are the two that I would like to focus on. First one is the data bias. um, in general, the samples which we collected, they are from a limited demographics. So even though the results that we see are definitely promising, the model might not necessarily be more generalizable to a larger population. I still think this is a area that this is a bias that can be mitigated. Say once we, collect samples from different demographics or different population groups, it's possible to retrain this model and sort of improve on the confidence of the prediction that the model provides. The second problem, perhaps I would say, is a bit more challenging, and it's not only restricted to the CAD prediction. It's perhaps a more general purpose, perhaps a more general problem that's prevalent across AI for healthcare applications, which is model interpretability or explainability. What it means is, as models become more complex, their predictive power generally increases, meaning they generally give better results, but their interpretability decreases, meaning we don't really know why they give better results, um, at least not fully. So, for example, in this graph, you can see some of the simplest algorithms, which is like linear regression, logistic regression. They are used to model simple linear relationships between features and outputs. So they are reasonably interpretable in the sense, for example, if this is a weighted linear relationship, or W1 into F1, W2 into F2, where F1, F2, F3, they are the features from the previous slides. We would know that if I change a feature to value by some amount, how much would the entire value change? And based on that, how much would the prediction change? It's easier to sort of uh, interpret simple linear relationships, if I were to say that. But the problem sometimes is that the data itself might not be inherently linear in nature. So for a lot of these simple linear models, the predictive power and the accuracy, it's comparatively lower compared to more complex models that can model non-linear dependencies between features and corresponding outputs. Now, they will generally give you higher accuracy, but at the same time, it will be difficult to tell which feature is really influencing the prediction of the model. Like, for example, a non-linear relationship will or might look like, say, W1 into multiplication of two features into, or plus W2 into square of the second feature. As these relationships get more nonlinear, the explainability, it reduces further, and it's sort of like a challenge that the research community in AI is still slowly overcoming. Now, finally, I would like to, briefly talk about what the future, really holds for AI in healthcare. I think, or at least based on some evidence that I've seen, primarily AI will act as a helper to medical professionals to perform their jobs more optimally. Meaning, don't worry, it's not there to take your jobs, or it's not meant to replace any medical jobs. Um, Although more research work still needs to be done in few of the areas that I was talking about, which is mitigation of biases that occur because of the data that we collect. The bias might be racial, gender bias, or just a demographic bias, and so on. And more research, I think, also needs to be done in improving the explainability of the machine learning models before we start seeing a really wide ranging adaptation of AI in the medical profession. Yeah, I would like to conclude with that, and thank you for letting me present in today's conference.
Thank you, Gautam. That was a very difficult topic for us. And I think you presented it very well, gave us a very insightful, and there were a lot of questions which we had. So I think we really handled them beautifully. Thank you so much. So we do have some questions here, and welcome Sanjay sir is also here with us, our chairperson.
Hello, sir.
And let me just get these questions. So it's a very difficult topic at the onset. Let me say that we are less questions also sometimes means that we don't really understand much. So it's tough for us. But there are a few questions which I would like to ask.
So let me kick off the question till you're able to search out the questions. And this is to Gautam and as well as to Vaishali. I mean, we're talking about prediction models coming from, data from any source. I mean, we're looking at Google AIs, which are looking at retinal models to see what is the cardiovascular risk. And we had a presentation by Sundar Pichai to that extent. So I'm sure there'll be so many variables that, we can pick and choose on human behaviors, which will probably identify, how things will predict for the future. Tell me that these all predictions that are there, what are has there been sequential models studied prospectively which have shown what is the linearity of their actual occurrences versus the predictions that have happened?
So by sequential models, do you mean like models that are used to identify sequences, time series sequences?
Yeah, I mean, it could be time, space sequences, whatever you may say, that because you may look at, let's say you've got 10 different models that you're looking at predicting the same risk, right? So do we have models which will say which is the right score that will tell us that which comes closer to actual occurrences of the events, number one. And number two, that what is the linearity that, when you actually see them prospectively, or let's say retrospectively, that these models predicted and what has been the actual occurrence of the events?
Okay, so I guess for the first question, I would generally go by this sort of, if I were to use, say, 10 different machine learning models and were to make an educated guess, which one would actually work better, and maybe rank them according to the order of their performances. More often than not, neural network based algorithms, or say if you are talking about sequences, the modern transformer architectures, they tend to perform better compared to some of the previous generation algorithms, like simple linear classifiers and whatnot. But again, it's difficult to come up with a theoretical justification for why a given model is performing better compared to some other model. The usual, research sort of languages just try a different bunch of models and see which one works better for your use case. So I guess that's for the first question. Can you repeat your second question?
No, let me tell you again why I was asking you this question. See, for any predictions to happen, the accuracy increases with more and more data being fed in. So the larger number of data sets that you're able to train the model, the finer the accuracy happens, right? That's more accurate. Correct me if I'm wrong about this, right?
Yes. So it might not necessarily be the case always. Usually what it has been observed is that it's like a logarithmic curve where in the beginning you keep on exponentially increase the data and you do see exponential improvements in the accuracy, but over time, say no matter how much you try to increase your data sample size, it sort of flattens out. So there's a sweet spot where you should ideally stop the data collection part and then like focus on the actual model tuning part, because the data collection part probably wouldn't enhance your accuracy in any meaningful way.
So, I mean, again, the point is that typically technologies do not work on human models. And, you look at it from a predictive model point of view. Now, unless you're testing this in human models and you see what is the actual rate of accuracy that you see in people who, so let's say you've predicted a person that you've got 80% accuracy that you will get a cardiovascular event, let's say 5 years down the line. Has anybody looked at it that 5 years down the line, did that person actually get it or not?
Oh, I see. Okay. Probably someone might have looked at it, but
otherwise it just looks like a crystal ball that you're looking into and you don't know whether that thing is ever going to occur or not.
Yes. So maybe 5 years down the line is a bit too far for research like that to have taken place. But, maybe say 2 or 3 months down the line, I presume people would have tracked the human subjects.
So if I can add to what Gautam is saying, probably it is a food for thought for AI engineers, because it's not been compared. The AI models for cardiac risk assessment have not been compared with each other, because I think that will be a step ahead of what we are doing, because this is the earliest prediction models. We could find very few actually. And secondly, one important aspect of this study is that you need to do a prediction model or based on an investigation which is applicable to masses. So we can't be really using a AI model which is using, say, stress test or 2D echo, which is done to select category of class of patients. It's not done to masses. So we tried doing it earliest on the ECG. And because this HRV machine has a ECG recording with nearly 1000 hertz speed, so it's a very high speeded ECG record. So it gives you better accuracy because of the speed. So this is why over a routine ECG, a tele-HRV record was a much preferred sort of a variable to be considered for the AI. And probably I think Gautam has a lot of research to be done to compare these models, which sir is saying that you need to see which is better as a cardiac predicting model. And if you have to talk in relation to our study, if you can see, the humans could diagnose 70%, 71% of accuracy of CAG positivity in these patients. So you see the population which was subjected to the AI model, 70% were CAD positive, but the same when used in the AI model predicted to the tune of 91%. So it means that 20% extra was predicted by AI model as compared to human assessment of CAD. And that's what Gautam also showed, that stress test does this to the tune of something like 80%. So a human doctor could convince, or rather could reach a diagnosis of CAD in nearly 71%. And the same set of population when AI machine learning was done could predict to the tune of 91%. So it was predicting 20% better yield of results for these patients. So I think even this pilot study, I think, gives a good understanding of how AI can enhance our accuracy for diagnosis of CAD.
So, Vaishali, let me come back. I'm sorry I'm holding up your question.
No, sir, please. I think this discussion is answering most of them, actually.
So, Vaishali, I'll come back to you again. All right. If you look at typical cardiovascular risk, it doesn't occur in months. It occurs over timelines. Okay. You're looking at risk factors which are going to develop over, let's say, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, whatever are there. And there are interplay of number of factors. All right. It is not a single factor that determines cardiovascular risk, right? That's my point number one. Point number two, if you're over-diagnosing through the AI prediction model, right, are you going to be over-intervening for prevention purposes, right? So there you kind of risk to say that people who will never develop it, you're going to expose them to, prevention strategies, maybe even pharmacotherapies for something that you don't know will actually occur, because this is machine learning and you don't know the accuracy of the machine learning that will happen over a period of time. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
a little dangerous trend to that to determine that.
Yes, I totally agree with you that there is a chance that you are over-diagnosing and over-treating, but this is not a model for masses because this is a select group of biased population. So we are not saying that this model can be used for masses. It needs that's what the limitation is what Gautam had put forth, that this data of AI model is just predicting. It's like a learning or a pilot study for a select class of population. It is not for masses and it can't be used for masses unless you have the data of HRV of the masses coming into the biased learning. And secondly, what you rightly mentioned, the number of variables decides the accuracy. So here we are taking HRV. Maybe we add the stress test, we add the echo, we add the gender, we add the risk factors, smoking. You add all the risk factors, you're going to increase the predictive accuracy. So definitely what I learned from Gautam over years is that more the number of variables, more the data accuracy and more the volume of data, the better is the prediction, better is the interpretability of this whole data. And the predictive power increases, but we will not be able to identify which of the risk factors of these. Say if I take 1,000 variables, I will not be able to identify which is the one which is directly linked with the risk. As the number of variables increases, my understanding of which variable is most important comes down. Because that was the graph which he showed, Gautam showed, that interpretability and predictive power are inversely proportional. So the predictive power, as it increases, the understanding of interpretation of which variable is important comes down significantly. So I think there is a lot of learning from this whole project that we did. And now we are focusing on getting data from the communities. That is why we have started doing these camps with healthy people, unhealthy people, and we are trying to add on as much data as possible. So that maybe their lifestyle will be taken, their sleep habits, their health assessment, their lifestyle modifications, their exercise time, everything can be added up. So there are many factors and many variables which the model can be trained to, the machine can be trained to. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. That's what I could get from all this.
But equally important is the fact is the accuracy of negative predictability. How many are you missing out?
That's right.
That it also should be inbuilt to the fact that is there a corrective mechanism, or let me say, I'm not very sure what the right word would be, is can the system detect that, okay, what was negatively predicted, what was the accuracy rate of that? Because then you're actually missing out positive case, which the system did not pick it up.
So Gautam, would you really like to answer that? Yeah.
Sure. So I guess I would put forward the what the system needs to do in something like this. The system need not only use ML-based algorithms for prediction, and usually in a lot of scenarios, ML-based and rule-based algorithms are used in conjunction, where if the ML model is, say, predicting too many false negatives, then there are some rules which are trying to, which are there to keep the workings of ML model in place or in check. So, building a system that sort of uses these two different systems in conjunction, so that one system tries to counterweight the negative effects of the other. That might be a better solution compared to using just the ML model.
Over to you, Archana.
Yes. So a lot of questions, I think the kind that were questioning the accuracy and AI have already got answered in this discussion. A couple of questions here. One is directly to you, ma'am, is that how can they access the papers that you had shown during the presentation? Is there a way?
It is there on the Google Scholar. Okay. Google Scholar and Google, all the publications are there.
Right. Wonderful. And there are a lot of interest, I think it has generated. So a lot of questions have come in saying that can AI prediction of abnormal fractional flow reserve in patients undergoing CCTA possible? Again, can we assess readmission rates in heart failure patients through this kind of models? So is there anything else that we have been looking at?
So it really depends on what kind of data is fed to the MN models, because as say computer scientists, we wouldn't really know which data correctly say tries to identify a given particular disease. We would only know how to make the model run. So if the data is such that the medical professionals are confident that this particular data or these particular sets of feature is truly indicative of a given disease, then it's possible to input that data into a model and train something out of it.
So there's another question that is there any comparative study on various devices that measure heart rate variability?
There have been, I think I can take this because there have been a lot of devices which measure the so-called heart rate variability, but the question comes with accuracy. And if you have to ask for comparative studies, there are only few. And if you see the major devices, they just give you the variability in proportions in terms of percentages or differences. They don't give it in form of these domains, the frequency domain and time domains. And if you see the gold standards for HRV assessment globally, they are in terms of these domains. It's like HbA1c versus a spot HbA1c. You understand the exact difference. The lab HbA1c has a lot of gold standards, while a HbA1c on spot in your clinic will not have a gold standard, but it will give you a rough about estimate of that particular. So accuracies are different. So I think that's the only difference I can compare with both these devices as well as.
I think a comment from you about a watch, heart rate watch, initiated a bit of interest. That is there a watch that measures heart rate variability? Is there anything existing?
Yeah, there are Fitbits and there are watches, Apple watches also, devices, and you get certain HRV measures also, which you can actually use it as a band. And they usually measure the heart rate and how the beats change. So they give you the number. They don't give you the domains. They don't give you a SDNN. They don't give you a high frequency, low frequency domain. So they are not accurate in terms of patient diagnosis. It can give a rough about estimate, and if you see the accuracy is very poor, I don't think there is any specific study done in this respect, because there is no quality control to that heart rate variability. It's like any BP device that we are using. The BP, the digital BP devices, the wrist devices that we get, they are quite variable. So I think it's okay for if a person wants to keep a regular monitoring of that device, but otherwise, I don't know whether Gautam, you're aware in US, are there any such devices which are compared?
Not sure. I mean, I just so for HRV, I just know about Fitbit and like the Apple Watch, which actually track these values, but I don't think they are compared in terms of quality, which one is better than the other.
Thank you. So I have last two questions because this is quite late now. One for you, Dr. Vaishali ma'am, is there a body working in AI in CVD, or is this all individual small group research? Is there a specific body that works especially in this field?
So there is a European Society of Cardiology which works mainly into the electrophysiological aspects of the coronary artery disease. That is what I am aware of. I don't know from the AI perspective, maybe Gautam can share. I don't know the AI aspect at all. I'm all techno handicapped in that aspect.
I'm not sure about a central body that does something like AI explicitly for healthcare. A lot of universities do it in isolation or in sort of conjunction with the industry, but not really aware of a single authority for this.
Okay.
There are some conferences though, like machine learning for healthcare conference. So organizers for that might be working on something.
So I think that is where person who's interested can reach out to. So that would be interesting. And last question of our evening goes to Gautam. And the question is that how easy is it to manipulate data that is used for AI to work upon?
It's very easy. If you are doing your own, if you are doing like an individual research, it's perhaps pretty easy. In a larger organization, there are many checks and balances that will prevent you from doing so. But for individual research, I mean, you just have to be honest and not manipulating your results and not manipulating the data.
I think a lot of questions we got today are about AI use, misuse. How can we trust that? What are the guidelines? Who will control the data, data privacy? But I think these are questions that we do not really have great answers to. Is there any last sentence that both of you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I would like to mention what Gautam said in his last slide, that AI is not there to replace human brains, because finally the data is provided by human brains. So I think we are there to get the aid of AI to help our predictability, our assessments, and make life easier and better quality of life for our patients. That's what we are trying to achieve by having a CAT diagnosis. And we are not saying we are having an answer to everything, but we are trying to get as accurate as possible using this kind of technology. And I think we need more of learning from people like Gautam. So I'm sure that this is good learning for me too today, and I learned a lot from him. So Gautam, what about you?
Yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, there's there's just a world of knowledge outside computer science which I'm I guess still not fully familiar with, but it's a fun experience to interact with professionals from different fields and kind of understand that uh, this field does have a wide-ranging impact on different domains, including medical. So yeah, would like to keep on continuing with some of the research work in this. And yeah, thank you. That's all. Mhm.
So any comments before we close?
No, I think, it was a very enlightening discussion. Both Vaishali and Gautam did an exemplary job of, such a difficult topic,
Difficult job.
making it so easy. But I think there are a lot of questions which are still unanswered. We know that we will have to adopt technology because that's the future, and we can't shy away from the fact that we don't want technology or we will not make an effort to understand technology. I think we all have to do it. It's going to be the future. It's just a question of where you find the right balance between the human brain and the technology. That is going to be important, from a healthcare perspective, because nothing is black and white in medicine. We always know that there are more gray areas, and that is where the challenge lies, that which of the two would be more useful to find out the gray areas.
That's right.
Thank you. So we close today's session. Thank you, everyone who has joined in. We had more than 400 viewers logged in till right now. And I want to tell all our viewers that this video is going to be on the IDEC website very soon. Within a week, you can have it in the IDEC library, which has all these videos, so that if you want to share, if you want to revisit it and something that you missed, then the slides and the entire talk would be available. And last but not least, my very, very warm regards and thanks to Gautam and Vaishali ma'am for being here this late time, and all the way from Seattle, Gautam has logged in, and it was a wonderful talk. As sir said, not easy, but definitely a lot of food for thoughts, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion which will go forth. Thank you so much. And do keep joining in to Wednesday cafes, which are every fourth Wednesday, 9 p.m. At the IDEC website. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Archana, I should say you did an exemplary job of moderating the whole discussion.
I should agree.
Thanks. So let me say the thanks to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night.
और अच्छा हो गया Archana.